this is big. This is really big.
Marlins fans, and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by La Pop. That is LAPOP. And of course, you can check them out on Instagram, Twitter, and at their Doral location. And Marlins fans, a big series, if not maybe one of the biggest series, as we are winding it down on this season here at Lone Depot Park for the 2023 year. Marlins against, now you can officially say, division winning Atlanta Braves clinched the division just a few days ago, I believe for the 6th straight year, coming down to Lone Depot Park to have a series against the Fish. The Marlins did lose 3 out of the 4 against the Milwaukee Brewers. It was not a great time there. Really bad performances almost all around, and something we can really discuss there, maybe more on the pitching side. We could just go ahead and talk about that first game. 12-0. Nothing really talked about. I just wanted to mention 2 things there. Brandon Woodruff had probably a career game, complete game there at one of his, I believe his 10th, 9th start of the year coming back from injury. So really great start from Brandon Woodruff. And then Jesus Luzardo had the opposite of that, maybe one of his worst starts on the year, giving up 6 earned runs in about 5 innings. Eli, how would you describe Jesus Luzardo in that game? 6 earned runs on 10 hits, and to also include their 4 walks.
Man, he's just been inconsistent for most of the second half of the season. There was a stretch in there that was really concerning soon after the All-Star break, and then he had a stretch soon after that where he went 3 straight quality starts that were nearly perfect, and then he has something like this. So it's just been that roller coaster where there are certain days, especially with his slider, where that is such a good put-away pitch. Normally, he usually gets a lot of chases on it, but there are other times where guys just seem to really recognize it well out of his hands, and where it's just breaking too early. He doesn't get chases out of the zone. That has big consequences on really his entire deal on the mound. If they can eliminate that pitch, then you can still cheat and catch up to a high 90s fastball. As exceptional as his stuff is overall, a lot of it stems from that and how other teams have been. I would just say that the advanced scouting on him seems to have gone up a notch as the season has worn on. There was concern about him this year. We're looking at it in terms of his physical durability. How would he hold up pitching innings that he hasn't pitched before? And I haven't seen like a whole lot of signs about fatigue really factoring into that. I just think this is more about somebody that is seeing the league more times than he's ever seen before, and they're making some good adjustments against him, doing some good scouting, and that hasn't precluded him from having some awesome outings and bouncing back. But from start to start at this stage of the year, you don't really know what you're going to get from him, and that's been pretty costly for this team as the season has gone on. As this rotation, just there hasn't really been that many pockets of the season where everybody in the starting rotation has been trustworthy at the same time. And yeah, with Luzardo, it's just been kind of oscillating between being his usual self and then being somebody like this, where you end up with Jacob Stallings finishing the game on the mound because it gets that far out of hand.
Alex, what's your point on Luzardo? Because Eli mentioned the consistency. Some days he's out there 7 innings, 12 strikeouts. The other, he's giving up almost 12 hits and almost no strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this start, I thought he was on one of the most consistent stretches that we've seen him on, with 3 straight quality starts, and then he just blows up again. But Eli pretty much said it. When he doesn't have command of the secondaries, he barely threw the changeup at all. He didn't have the changeup whatsoever. And then he didn't have the slider. And when you don't have that, you can sit fastball, and that's what guys did. And he was pretty much very, very hittable. So it's concerning. It really is. Is this guy ever going to really find the consistency that you need him to show to be an every 5th day starter? And at this point, after another full season, it's getting more doubtful. And it's tough for me to say that because I saw this kid as a sophomore in high school throwing 98 miles an hour. So it's really tough to see where he was from a very young age to where he's gotten to now this far into his big league career. I mean, the Marlins brought him in. They knew he was inconsistent with the A's. and he's still inconsistent now, and they haven't really been able to solve for that. So yeah, it's definitely concerning with him. The other thing I'll say is that this was a really good chance. There is space in this bullpen for a multiple inning reliever, and Dan Castano came in with a chance to show that maybe he could stick with the team and didn't do it either. So that was a really rough game for the Marlins, a rough series overall for the Marlins.
Mm-hmm.
Pitching continues to be very worrisome. So,
Mr. Aram, thank you for joining us.
How's it going, everybody?
Doing really well now. We're here with Aram from Just Baseball. Aram, we were just talking about Jesus Luzardo. The Marlins had maybe not the best series there, so I just want to get your take for maybe that series for the Marlins and maybe any standouts that you really saw, because there were a lot of pitching performances that really fell to the wayside from the Fish that series.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head there. It was a great test. I think the Brewers are a really good baseball team, and I think this is a little bit better than the Brewers teams that we've seen in the last couple of years in terms of just being a little bit more complete, and I think a little bit more built for the playoffs. So I think it kind of was a little bit of that reality check, and a lot of the guys that have been stepping up and offensively just didn't do it, and that's, you can't really blame them, right? Because at the end of the day, somebody else has to kind of pick up the slack here. But on the pitching side, yeah, it's tough to see Jesus Luzardo kind of wane a little bit here down the stretch. But I do think it's important to note. I mean, 160 innings, right? This is almost, by the time the season's over, he'll almost will have doubled last year's total, which was already a career high last year. We know this guy's dealt with injury issues in the past. It's awesome to see him healthy for, knock on wood, the entirety of this year. But he talked about mechanical things that just didn't feel right for him. And I think that comes with fatigue. And I think this is a fatigued pitching staff overall. I mean, Yuri Perez looked really sharp out of the gate, still turned in a fine start. But again, this was a guy that just kind of seemed like, it just seems like now with the Yuri starts, he comes out hot and then it just kind of fizzles as the second time around, and then maybe the third time around if he gets there. And I think this is a guy that's also feeling the fatigue a little bit. I know he's buzzing 100, but you start to see that drop a little bit as the start goes on, and you start to see him leave it up a little bit more. The curveballs that were unhittable become a little bit more hittable. My mind always goes back to that CJ Abrams homer, and I'm like, man, he was not doing that earlier in the year. I mean, nobody even had a hit off of that pitch. So I just think it's fatigue, and that's why the Sandy injury hurts, so much, because that seemed like the one guy who's impervious to fatigue, but clearly, I mean, nobody is in this brutal sport.
Yeah, with that last Yuri start, dominant the first time through the lineup, he had 5 Ks, all of them swinging. The life on his fastball was awesome, and then the second time through, I think the Brewers went 4 for 8 against him. A lot of line drives into the gaps, and the defense didn't help him behind him. Yeah. Jacob Stallings had kind of an off game. Brian Del Cruz had a couple really subtle misplays that I don't want to harp too much on that stuff. You need a lot of it to go right, though, for this team to win. And they kind of got lucky, too, in that Yelich missed this entire series. It kind of went under the radar, that Christian Yelich, who this Brewers team offensively, they have their own struggles as well. And you take Yelich out of their lineup for the entire series, to get outscored 19-5 by the Brewers without Yelich is concerning, to say the least.
Yeah. Josh Donaldson's killing them. Come on. I will say the one positive, the staff has been frustrating. They needed a quality start, and who steps up? The walking quality start that is Braxton Garrett. I know he has his blowups here and there, as almost any pitcher does really in the game nowadays with how good these hitters are. But I mean, that start for me, I mean, obviously we've been bought in on Brax, but I don't know, that one for me was really just kind of just hit it home, because I'm like, this team needed a quality start as much as anybody. I know the Brewers aren't great against lefties. I know it's not their best lineup without Yelich in there, but man, it just felt like that might be the guy you trust as much as anybody right now with the way he's been able to throw. And I mean, if they don't get that win with Brax, things are even more dire. So I mean, it was really cool to see him turn out another quality start, and he's just been remarkable this year.
Yeah, really cool to see a prospect that, when he was a prospect, a lot of people that were kind of almost out on Braxton, even though he had the awesome curveball, and despite the really low velo, he's made it work, which is definitely cool for Braxton. I've been glad to see him succeed, because we all knew it was there despite the limited velo because of how good his breaking stuff is, and he's making it happen. The thing that I'll say about Perez is, I don't know how you can throw 84 pitches and 50 of them be fastballs and be successful. That it just doesn't happen. Yeah. So
No.
50 of his pitches were fastballs of 84. He literally threw 34 breaking pitches in that start. So you can't do that. Like, you got to have your breaking stuff a little bit more involved. He didn't have it in that start, but as you guys said, it's the most innings this pitcher has ever thrown. They took the innings limit off. They expected stuff like this to happen. So I'm still not worried about Yuri Perez and the long-term future of Yuri Perez. He needs to be where he is right now, and he's here for a reason.
Yeah, we have Isaac and Kevin for the press box report. We'll get to them in just a minute. I want to finish off this series with the Marlins and the Brewers. How do you guys feel about hitting wise? We mentioned just one game. Again, overall, you look at this that series with the Fish, they were able to get off, I believe, 4 or 5 runs in total, where it seemed like the Brewers had close to 20 runs. Just how do you guys believe the Marlins were able to have the bats there against the Brewers, and is that a concern for you guys as they're going up against a team that just won the division?
This is the first time you really felt them missing Jorge Soler in this one, especially just no power, especially from the right-handed side. And even though you can point to that as an issue, all of a sudden, as we're going to get to shortly, it looks like he's kind of on the precipice of returning, which is good news. That the most optimistic recovery time possible with him, but his absence was really felt here. And the way that they move things around, it was cool to see Xavier Edwards getting these reps to play almost every day. I know that arm is a little bit low on him, and it's been interesting to see. He's been showing his bunting prowess a couple times, a couple bunt singles overall. He does, but that's essentially how they've changed things around without Soler. Is it's Edwards playing every day, and he just does not fill the void that Soler has left behind offensively. So even when they were getting some runners on base, they weren't really doing anything with those runners. Yeah, you can point in a lot of different directions. Like it's I think they've made the appropriate move to essentially push Yuli Gurriel into the corner. So he barely was involved with this series. You can't blame him on holding back their offense. I think put the best available hitters are kind of on the field, but it's just they don't have a lot of great available hitters right now. There are just too many soft spots in here. You need what you were getting through a lot of August is you were getting a lot of power from Josh Bell and occasionally from Jake Berger as well. And so when they don't slug, and when Soler is out, you're just really running out of ways to put up crooked numbers on the board.
Yeah.
Even the win, I would say, like the win that they got 2-0, that was a glorified bullpen game for the Brewers. They threw out Tyler McGill and Colin Ray, old friend from the Marlins, Colin Ray. They threw these guys out, and the Marlins get 2 runs and 2 extra base hits, and the 2 extra base hits that they get are from De La Cruz and Hampson, right? Like that's pretty embarrassing. So
and
yes,
Milwaukee.
Daniel, this offense struggled. This offense struggled in this series for sure. You gotta score more runs than that. Like, come on. Like, yeah, I know they won the game. That's great. In the standings, yes, it matters, as we're seeing on the screen. But you get 2 runs, and then the rest of the series, you don't get very many runs at all. Concerning.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add, and the reason why I do like having Xavier Edwards, kind of in the fold here, my concern with him is more, at shortstop in that situation. But when you look at what this team has really struggled with, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, and this is something Eli would probably have like off the dome, but I feel like there's a confirmation bias with runners in scoring position. I think any team that you watch more closely or that you root for, you're always going to feel like your team doesn't do as well as the others with runners in scoring position. I feel like that's just like a classic thing. But I will say, like, there's a level of frustration with this team, oftentimes where I'm not saying they need to sacrifice bunt more or do all these things, but runner on second, less than 2 outs, like. I can't tell you how many times. And again, I don't watch the Marlins as much as I used to in terms of like comparatively to the rest of the league. I get it's hard nowadays to do those situational type things, but the amount of times that I've seen them go, pull a ball into left field or to the left side when you have somebody on second base and no outs, like those types of things are really frustrating because this is a team that needs to manufacture runs, right? They've been bailed out so many times by the big home run from a Berger or from a Soler or from a Josh Bell or even a Jesus Sanchez at points. But like, I would love to see this team manufacture runs a little bit more. And you have, you have the guys that can do that. You have a Luis Arias. I think Josh Bell is actually pretty good situationally and puts bat on ball at least pretty frequently. Like I would just love to see them, be more efficient and more effective in that way. And we know for a fact, as DeMar points out here, nobody grounds into more double plays than the Marlins, and that is another situational thing. I mean, that is absolutely, there's nothing that swings run probability more than a double play. It's one of the biggest, win probability swings you can make in one single play that isn't, a 3-run shot or a grand slam. Like, it is incredibly frustrating to see this team situationally. And I will say, like, Garrett Hampson's been one of the exceptions to that of late. Like, he's been doing all the little things, and he's been a good piece for them. I think he's riding a nice little BABIP streak here. He's obviously striking out a ton, but I would just love to see this team be a little bit better situationally because you're not always going to be able to rely on the big homer.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot now with Jorge Soler out. So we're going to bring in Kevin and Isaac, multiple press box reports, I assume, as they're in the press box for this first game of the Atlanta Marlins series, with a very interesting pitching matchup with Bryce Elder right up against Mr. Cueto. Whoever to lead off on the press box report, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest news of all is that Jorge Soler was taking early BP. He's hit in 3 consecutive days, and he is eligible to come off the IL tomorrow. I think that'd be a little bit too optimistic that he'd be in the lineup tomorrow, but I see him getting activated in the next couple of days. Everyone is, happy with the way he looks, the way he feels. He was obviously the Miami's nominee for the Roberto Clemente Award, so we spoke about that a lot. But mainly, he feels healthy, he feels good, and he's going to be a big help, like you guys mentioned, to this team down the stretch that was just starving for extra base hits and in the most hitter-friendly ballpark I can imagine in Milwaukee. So they're going to need him back.
Skip did mention that he's hopeful that Soler comes back this weekend. He used the word hopeful, so we'll see. Obviously, they need him. They need him big time. Next weekend, I believe. Yeah, next weekend they need him. So that'll be Milwaukee. They need him. He's a big piece of this team, and they need him. I think that he's clutch. He's done everything. He still mentioned the possibility of having him in right field, which I can't believe. So I'm very surprised he mentioned right field for Soler. I thought he would keep him the DH, and and then he also spoke about Yuli just not playing as much, and obviously it makes sense why he's been struggling. But they wanted him to get to 300 plate appearances this season. It's pretty close to that, apparently, according to Skip. So we'll see. Still a little surprised with Arise playing first. I would like him at second. There's a lot going wrong right now for Miami. And it's going to get even worse probably with this Atlanta series.
Kevin, do they need Soler though?
I think it would. Yeah, come on, dude.
How do the Braves look? Coming off a division win, they clinched the division. Do they seem more joyful, more excited? Are they more relaxed at the ballpark? Who
looks most hungover? All the guys there.
Max Fried honestly seemed a little bit down, and I know Kevin got to speak with him, and he had an interview. But no, this is a team that's serious. They still have things to play for, and obviously there's no love lost between these two ball clubs, and I think they're going to come out and play their hardest. As if they haven't clinched anything.
On top of that, a couple former Marlins. You have Luke Williams, he's back. Brad Hand, Marcell Ozuna from the Braves is here as well. So, a lot of former Marlins. Am I missing anyone?
You got them.
Yeah, we spoke to Hand. We spoke to Luke Williams. Those will be coming out soon. So, a lot of those guys are pretty happy to be where they are. Obviously, I think when I spoke to Fried, he mentioned still got to keep going. Can't stop. Can't stop now. We got to keep going. And
Kevin mentions Luke Williams, but doesn't mention Walt Weiss. I'm embarrassed.
Luke Williams, baby. That's what we're going with.
That's right. That's a good point.
All right. I want to hear from Aram Sixto. What was your thoughts? What was your impression? I feel like this is the talk of the town, the talk of at least the Marlins. I at least got to hear your opinion on this whole situation and just the mystery of Sixto.
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest step he's made. Obviously, sitting at 86 miles an hour is, not what you want to see. But to me, it was, I didn't see him as really trying to go out there and throw hard. To me, I think it was almost like, let me get out on the mound and just feel this again. Like you saw that breaking ball that I believe it was you guys that posted, where it was just like he was almost guarding the follow through. And I get it, man. Like every time this guy starts to ramp up, his shoulder flares up, so he's guarding it a little bit. And I think he's got to ease into being able to unleash it. But I think just purely seeing him on the mound in any game setting has to be one of the more positive things that you can see, and honestly was something that I started to doubt we would ever see. So from that lens, it's encouraging. I will say I watched back, and the changeup looks good. It looks like Sixto's changeup, and he was throwing that at 80. And that's the funny thing is I felt like he was almost throwing the changeup harder and letting the grip kind of take care of it, but then guarding the fastball a little bit. And then we saw him kind of guard that breaking ball a little bit. But I mean, it's encouraging. This is a guy that can succeed at 90 to 93. It's relative success, right? But if the velo doesn't go back to the upper 90s, this is a guy that can be a ground ball pitcher in the low 90s. So interested to see how he progresses here, and if he starts to kind of bump it up a little bit. I know you guys mentioned he's going to throw a little bit of a pen there, and we'll see what he does. But yeah, it's the best update we've gotten in a while. I'll say that. I was tired of seeing how many feet he's throwing from. I'm glad it's 60 feet 6 inches this time, and let's hope he can keep doing that.
Yeah, to 1 to 2 innings scheduled for Sunday, 20 or 25 pitches, whatever comes first. So who knows?
It's an interesting dynamic there, where that's their final regular season game at Pensacola. I wonder if he stays there. Are they going to put him in a playoff game just because he's scheduled to be available? Is he going to decide potentially their quest to repeat as Southern League champs, or maybe they bump him up to, if things go well, maybe they bump him up to Jacksonville and have him finish out the year there.
Who knows?
We'll see. But just taking it one appearance at a time, one pitch at a time, of course.
Yeah.
Something I want to note on the go ahead, Aura. My bad.
I said one pitch did hit 88, so
Wrapping up.
He's cooked, bro.
With the Braves side, I want to mention Acuna is at 37 homers, 66 stolen bases. I mean, it's possible this series that he gets to it. He gets to that 40-70 marker. He has Cueto pitching tonight. Don't know who it is tomorrow, and then you have a struggling Luzardo on Sunday. So we'll see what happens there, but he's not too far off. Stallings and Fortes not the greatest catcher duo when it comes to throwing runners out. So he has a good shot at getting to that 40-70 marker this series.
Well, while we still have you guys, I think we should confront the big issue of the day. It is a Flanagan's Cup giveaway at the ballpark.
Oh,
we've had some mixed opinions about this, and
I think it's cool.
You think it's okay?
Yeah,
horrible.
What's
under
negative on this?
like maybe a little bit lackadaisical in the creativity aspect of it, but what do you want from them? To put a picture of Jesus Luzardo on the cup? I think it's cool.
It would have been more creative than just a small black little Marlins logo on the side of it where you have to turn the cup.
I thought maybe they could have put the words Lone Depot Park on it somewhere, something else. I agree. They got
to pay for that.
But they got to pay for that. We only got one elevator here at Lone Depot Park that's working. So I don't think they're putting too much thought into their cups, of their Flanagan's cups. But I think it's fine, whatever. I'm looking forward to getting one, hopefully. I'll try and get a couple so I can give some to you guys. But let those be our problems, right?
Do they have like Flanagan's food there? Like, is it like?
No, I wish. No. They have a big Marlin outside. I think guys put a picture of it, and apparently they sold out for the Flanagan's Cup. So there's going to be 10,000 people here, and they have to get more of them for it. So
yeah, I'm interested to see the crowd. I'm interested because at the end of the day, we were talking about it, and in a more extreme example, we were just talking about on the Just Baseball show, like the Rangers feel like this massive disappointment all of a sudden because of how hot they started and the way that they fizzled. But then I think about it and I'm like, how high were our expectations really for the Rangers going into this year? Like we were optimistic and thought it would be good, but it was one of those situations where it's like, oh, if they make the wild card and get bounced, it's a failure. Where now it feels like it is. The Marlins, I don't want to move the goalpost because obviously, you want to see them make the playoffs, but I think to be playing games that matter, like we're talking about, the wild card on September 15th. And I can't remember, I don't count 2020 as much as, I know people want to, especially within the Marlins org. It's hard for me to count it, especially when I mentally check in every year, 60 games through and see where everything's at. And I'm like, holy crap, this is still like just way too early for anything to matter. As far as I'm concerned, this is the first time since 2009 that we've really been able to say on September 15th, like these games matter. And I know they expanded the playoffs and things like that, but I really hope that fans are still finding a way to have fun with this, even if they fizzle, even if they play like crap the rest of the way. Like we're watching and we're scoreboard watching on September 15th. I would have killed for that when I was a kid. I would have killed for that when they were playing in the old ballpark. Like, just have some fun, scoreboard watch, and even if you feel like they have no shot, pretend they do. And I think that I hope fans are showing up, because this still is a big series. And, crazier things have happened than the Marlins taking 2 out of 3 at home from the Braves.
Yeah, you're telling me, because the Dolphins are about to do week 2 of their season, and the Marlins are playing relevant baseball games. So I totally agree with you. It's the last homestand of the season for Miami. So I think next week, I guess Wednesday would be the final home game of the year, assuming they don't make it. But yeah, the Rangers comparison was good, because you're right. Nobody expected them to be that good, and then when they were, it's really going to be deemed as a disappointment. Miami 14 games over 500 at some point in May. And then, to finish where they're at now, assuming that they go 500 the rest of the way, I guess you have to be a little bit disappointed. But even finishing with 75 wins was not on my scorebook before the year. They're already at 75. So, let's say they go 7-7, finish about 500. That's fantastic. But it's just a little bit, it stings knowing that they were 14 games over and overperforming like crazy. It's tough. It's tough to know how to feel when you're at this stage. But hey, they go 9-6. I think they sneak in.
Yeah. So, Kevin, Isaac, any last thoughts while you're at the press box before we head out and go to break, and then we officially talk about this Brave series?
Soler is going to get honored with the Roberto Clemente nomination. So they already have the little stage. Well, it's like a table set for him. He's very honored. He spoke today. That's how Isaac was able to get that quote from Soler. He's very honored to get it. He's always wanted to wear that 21, and today he gets the opportunity to do so. So he's very excited about it. And aside from that, right now we're a lot of postseason promotion they're doing here. On the Jumbotron, they have postseason stuff on here. It's a good time to be a Marlins fan, I would say. So our prediction video, we already have that done. So anything else on your end, Isaac?
No, I guess something I agree with, and I'm sure you guys have opinions on, is that Skip feels that number 21 should be retired all around baseball. That's just like with Jackie's numbers, and I would tend to agree with Mr. 3000 exactly. So, with that, the Mr. 3000's number should be retired all around baseball, number 21.
All right. So we have Kevin, Isaac at the ballpark. Make sure to check them out on Twitter, and then we'll watch their prediction video later. So, guys, have a good game. Good luck, and we'll see what happens. All right. We're starting here. Anything you guys want to talk about before we head into break? Alex, I saw you storm out when we mentioned Sixto. I think you're still worrisome on that.
I have no comments. I've been out on this guy for a long time. He's overweight, no work ethic. He's injured all the time. Like Aram said, he's like literally just soft tossing the baseball. So maybe there's a little bit more in the tank when he fully gets going, but then he could blow out his shoulder again. So I hope that doesn't happen. Of course, you don't want anybody to get injured, but yeah, he's throwing 88 miles an hour, guys. I mean, what else is there to say? This is a guy that used to throw 97, 98 very easily with an explosive follow through, and now he's just soft tossing the baseball to the plate. So I don't see it. I really don't see anything more in this player than maybe middle relief as a ceiling. I just don't see it. I really don't. So I hope I'm wrong. Maybe you can prove me wrong and still provide some value to the organization. The Marlins need to get something out of the Real Muto trade, right? This is your last hope. Maybe he does it.
Hey! Will Stewart is still in the organization.
Come on, like seriously, come on. Like, yeah. All right.
At least for a few more weeks. He missed some time with injury. He came off the IL.
We'll talk some prospects on the second half of the show for sure.
Yeah. So Isaac did not give me a flipped fish player. I think he just popped in.
Yes,
now.
I did.
Who was it? I didn't put anything together for it, so I was just going.
There's no way for me to like sort of give you guys a hint. No, it was
no,
Chris Johnson. Oh my God. Someone get me a new partner, please. Chris Johnson was my choice for today's Braves and Marlins pick.
We're just gonna browse through some guys from this list on Baseball Reference.
Straight I wanted to go with that Chavarria. I think one of the most handsome Marlins of all time.
Damn, I forgot Wes Helms was a Brave.
Helms was a Brave. Mike Dunn was one of my favorite because he had a lot of games pitched for Atlanta. Infante, Martin Prado were good ones, but I decided to go with the guy who got mad at Jose Fernandez for admiring his first career home run and then joining the Marlins. I think it was Tom Cola that said that they talked about it all the time when they were together with the Marlins in 2016, that little incident in Jose's rookie year. But That was
Walt Weiss
my
or
choice.
Greg Colburn. Walt Weiss or Greg Colburn would have been my picks in this case. Aram may be
Soler,
able
obviously.
to really those, but yeah. Weiss or Colburn. Chris Hammond's a good one too. That would have been.
I forgot
Um,
Salty's Braves tenure. I got to admit, I forgot. And Jesus Aguilar also works.
Dan Meyer. Yeah.
Luke
that's a good one.
Williams.
And
Jesus Aguilar.
Reed Johnson's a good one too.
Right.
Reed Johnson. That's a great one.
Holly.
Yeah.
Holly would have been a good one. 03 champ. Todd Holland.
Should we just do this every time, Eli? Just scroll through all the possible answers for Flip Fish. This is more, nostalgic.
Yeah, well, I think we should still pick out one, but then on the other side, yeah, I could load this up. This is not the complete list. This is just the ones that spent like at least half a season with the Marlins.
Jeff Baker. What a
Clown knows guy.
Silvio
yeah,
Veras.
what
Silvio
a jerk
Veras.
that guy was.
Good one.
Well, there you go. We'll be back we'll do another Milwaukee one next week on Monday.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you want to comment your most obscure Atlanta Brave and Miami Marlin, comment it on my tweet below.
Nick Anderson.
All right, Kevin.
Nick
All right.
Anderson.
Kevin loves Cervelli, Francisco Cervelli, as well.
All right, so we're gonna head to break, and when we get back, we're gonna preview this Atlanta Braves series, and then we're gonna get into some minor league awards for the Marlins this year. So stay tuned for that. All right, and we are back here on FOF Live, presented by La Pop. And we're going to go ahead straight into talking about some minor league awards for the Marlins. Of course, when you have Alex Carver and you have Aram here, you have to talk about some minor league prospects. So I wanted to ask you guys, I'm going to have maybe 3, 4 maybe awards for the Marlins in the minors. And I want you guys to maybe give me who you would choose. So we could do Player of the Year, Pitcher, Most Improved, and Surprise Prospect of the Year. So we could start ahead and say maybe who's your organizational-wise Player of the Year for the Fish.
I'll let Alex wants me to go first. Oof, that's a hard one.
Well, I don't think it's that hard. If you just go on production, it would have to be Troy this year. Troy Johnson.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
Troy
agreed.
Johnson. Yeah, I'll just start with that real quick. And Troy, what he's been able to do this year, I think, is really set himself up to be an option, for this team. Moving forward, I thought you could have made the case that they could have found some sort of role for him this year, but obviously with the trades they made, it kind of got a little bit cluttered. And I mean, what he's been able to do to tap into more power and still really not compromise his ability to hit has been pretty remarkable. And it's been fun to see because he's obviously one of the best dudes, people wise in the organization. He's just a fantastic human, but tapping into a little bit more raw power and then consistently hitting the ball in the air, like only a 36% ground ball rate. They're seeing the exit velos kind of flash above average now. Like that's why he's been able to hit 26 homers. So 310, 399, 562 slash line between double and triple, that'll play. And he's only gotten better as the year has progressed. I'm excited to see what he does when he gets a chance at the big league level, because I think he's shown that that hit tool may translate, and it's pretty damn good field to hit.
Yeah, it has to be Troy. 100% agreed on this. I mean, we talked to him like 2 years ago when he was then it was the Beloit Snappers, and he was talking about that was the one thing that was missing was power. And I asked him, I was like, hey, what are you going to do to come into a little bit more power? He basically said, I'm not changing anything. I'm going to let it come as it comes. And I thought that was just a great attitude. He describes himself while he was growing up. Literally, I'll always remember this quote. He said he's a cage rat. So he's always around the cage, scientifically studying pitching, watches video, just puts in a ton of work. And it's just such a cool guy, such a nice guy, a guy that just puts in work 24/7. And it's just a pleasure to see it pay off for this player. 2020 season. As Aram said, I think he should have been here before now. They will have to protect him from Rule 5. I think that they definitely should. They didn't do it last year. I know there were teams interested. He didn't get taken. They're going to have to do it this year. I really, really do think this player will be somewhere else. So, we'll see what the Marlins do. But if they don't protect him, he'll be on another team. So hopefully they at least put him on the 40-man before the deadline.
Yeah. And with Troy, do you guys believe, let's say he could make the opening day roster next season, or is he someone that maybe might still have to prove himself to the front office that he could be an everyday guy for the Fish, or at least on the roster for next year?
I think he could definitely be on the 26-man at the start of next year for sure.
One particular thing that occurred to me relatively recently is the reason why Troy was able to put up a 2020 season to this point is because he did trim down this year. And he used to be an outfielder. The Marlins converted him to first base. With the exception of this year, he'd at least dabbled still in the corner outfield spots with the exception of this year. And curiously, he has not gotten any reps this year, despite being more agile than he'd been in previous years. It's a lot easier to make the case for having him somewhere in the roster if he plays anywhere except for first base. So that's just something I've been thinking about. I have no strong conviction that he'd be good in the corner outfield spots. I'm just curious about that because he put in a lot of effort in terms of his conditioning this year. That's certainly paid off at the plate. And I found it odd that he has not gotten any outfield reps this year. I feel like that's pretty important to him. That's the defensive profile it works hand in hand with what your role is on a major league team. And for somebody like him that it doesn't have that sexy prospect pedigree, like everything you can do to make yourself more valuable to the team matters. So I think that might be something to follow in spring training to see if they try to give him as many avenues as possible to fit on the roster that way.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point you make because also just allows you to, if he's not penciled in as a starter because you want to go, sign a veteran or whatever it may be, you can still find ways to get him in the lineup 3-4 times a week by, rotating in the outfield. Maybe he gets a spot in the DH spot. Then he plays first base one day. And I think they should be working on rotating more DH days for Arias, but I know with Soler that kind of clogs it up. By all indications, it seems like, at least as far as I believe, Soler probably won't be coming back. So they'll have a little bit more fluidity with that DH spot. I'm a believer in rotating the DH spot. I don't like having someone clog it up unless they're, a special bat. Obviously Soler has held up his end of the bargain this year though. But I will say, you look at Brian De La Cruz in the outfield, I really don't think that Troy Johnson would be much worse. If you gave him time to actually work out there, and I was very surprised that he hasn't gotten any reps out there this year at all. I agree with that. And I think he was a little bit surprised about that as well. But you give him time in the outfield, I really don't think it would look much different. It might even look better eventually than Brian De La Cruz. And I think his arm would probably play a little bit better too. So yeah, I think it's interesting. And I hope they do kind of give him a little bit more reps in left field and get some looks that way because the bat looks like it's ready to play. And then also stolen base side of things, he focused on that. I think he worked with JD Orr a little bit on that, on that lead. Seriously, I'm pretty sure he did. And working on that shuffle and go that, a lot of guys, Anthony Volpe's a perfect example of that. And being able to kind of leverage that into being able to swipe bags. We see guys like Freddie Freeman doing it. You can get a good feel for it and swipe bags. And I don't know if he's going to steal 20 at the big league level, but I do think he can take 10 to 15. And, in today's game, that's a nice little added value.
Yeah. It's not apples to apples. It's a great fun fact that he has more steals this year than anybody on the Marlins major league team does. Despite,
wow.
That's an important note.
Yeah. He found something for sure. Because as you probably know, he came into this year in his minor league career, he had 11 stolen bases and now he has 22. So literally doubled his career total in 1 year. This is what I was going to say before you said it. I don't know if 20 would translate to the majors, but he could definitely he's not fast. He's just sneaky, right? I don't think he has above 40 grade speed, maybe 45, but I don't think his speed is very good at all. He's just sneaky and he knows how to get out to a good lead. So there's definitely value. Like you said, a first baseman, maybe corner outfielder that can steal 10, 15 bases, there's value. And then go gap to gap, as we said as well. I don't know about his home run total permeating. Jacksonville, if you go, to right field especially is pretty easy to hit in. But yeah, no, this guy definitely could be a 15 plus threat at the big league level. I think he definitely earns a spot. I think he will definitely hit for a pretty damn good average because of how scientific of a hitter he is, as I said before. This guy's going to be a big leaguer, and he's going to be a pretty quality big leaguer. It just depends on how much they can get him reps, and that's what we're going to need to see.
Yeah, and to go from that, we can go into the next award, organizational pitcher of the year. Through all the minor leagues for the Marlins, who is your almost pitcher of the year? Alex, who's your number one guy? Who gets the award for pitcher of the year?
Ah, man, there's just so many injuries on the pitching side. So, I mean, if you have to point to one guy, it's probably Monteverde. I would probably say it's Patrick Monteverde, low velo guy. But I mean, this guy came in as a pretty average sized dude, and he just fools guys. I mean, even when the baseball changed in the Southern League to the regular baseball, he's still been pretty effective. That's kind of what I was watching for. Is that baseball that they were using in the first half was much easier to grip. He said himself on podcast with us that he really liked it and hitters hated it. But when the baseball changed, I was like, okay, his stats are probably going to go up, right? And they really didn't very much. I mean, a little bit, but not very much. So he made that transition very well. Really good breaking stuff, fastball moves. I like this pitcher. I think he's tricky to figure out. Probably a back end guy. That's why he hasn't been up yet. I'm actually a little surprised that he hasn't been up with the Marlins yet, because I think there's been room. If only out of the bullpen for multiple innings, which the Marlins have looked for a lot. They've gone back to these more, just more journeyman guys instead of Patrick. But I think Patrick, another Rule 5 guy, I'm pretty sure, right? If I'm not mistaken. So if it's not this year, it's next year. I'm pretty sure it's this year, though.
No,
so,
next year.
Yeah.
Just a 2021 director. So
okay.
they have another year before that.
Okay, so they have a year. Okay, so they have a year on him. It was either this year or next year, but anyways. So again, this guy I think could definitely be up at some point very shortly. I think we'll get a spring training invite and probably get a chance to show what he has there. But I like Patrick. I think he's tricky to figure out, like I said. So got a bunch of pitches to him, 4 pitches at least. We'll see. So yeah, probably back end rotation. But it sucks to say that because of how much talent the Marlins do have in the system and still do have. Despite losing Eater and other guys, I think there's still talent, but a lot of them are hurt. So if you had to go for a guy that's lasted the full year, I'd go Patrick.
All right. Aram, same as Alex, or
yeah, it's got to be Monteverde just because of what he's been able to do this year. Of course, the first half was a lot better than the second half, and I think it kind of just once he had that blow up in AAA where they left him in there because they needed innings, and that was obviously a demoralizing outing. It just seems like. And then getting sent back to AA, it's got to be hard on the mental there, and I think that part of the game is kind of taking a toll on him, and you've kind of seen him stall out a bit in AA. But I mean, he was awesome up to that point, and I think it's been a nice story, but it's also a little bit of an indictment on the state of the Marlins pitching in terms of there is talent, and I think there's a lot of guys that could it'll be contentious next year for who might be that pitcher of the year in the system, but. In terms of production from top to bottom this year, pitching wise, it's slim pickings. But Monteverde's had a nice year.
Yeah, I'm tempted to go on the reliever side with Luarbert Arias. I got to pronounce his name correctly because the year that he's had Arias between High A Beloit and Double A Pensacola, I think it's gone under the radar. How many bats he's missing down there in this multi-inning relief role. Since getting pushed up to Pensacola, 28 strikeouts versus just 3 walks down there. He's just a 2-pitch pitcher, just a mid-90s fastball, 93, 94, 95, and this really crazy curveball or breaking ball of some kind that he's probably throwing even more than the fastball. Really, he's a minor league Rule 5 pick that they got the 2 off seasons ago. And I think last year he was all right, but this year took a pretty big step forward. Only 22 years old this year. Not anybody to get super excited about when it's just a reliever down there, but he's handled that jump to AA surprisingly well, and I've enjoyed watching him, even though I don't know exactly what that looks like at the highest level, but he's been a really productive. Luarbert Arias, just a really deep cut. That's
a deep cut, but the strikeout to walk ratio is pretty awesome. And also, I mean, you got me thinking, like, you can make a case for Maldi as well. I mean, Anthony Maldonado punching out 41% of batters, 1.72 ERA. Of course, banged up a little bit, and that kind of slowed some of the momentum. But man, he's been pretty awesome at the AAA level.
Yeah, so we'll go from that, and we could finish off with one more award before we head into a mini preview here about the Braves. Who has been maybe the most surprising prospect for the Marlins this year? Someone who maybe had low expectations as someone that come in and just maybe blossom this year. Again, lead the way, Alex. Who do you think is maybe the most surprising prospect for the Fish?
There's been a few, but I'll go Will Banfield for mine. That would be my guy. I was almost out on Will Banfield after last year, and he came in and hit 23 home runs. I mean, clearly found something with a 262 batting average. He clearly found something to have a career year at the highest level he's ever played at. I'll go with Banfield. The one thing that I will say about him is he doesn't walk at all, which is definitely a problem. But I definitely think that this guy switched up his approach. He is much more relaxed in his approach now, more so take what you can get kind of stuff from him at the plate. He said that to us on a podcast that I did earlier this year. So definitely needs to improve the walk rate, but man, just to come out, and really show that, hey, I was worth my draft pick, as a high school catcher, and get it done the way that he did at the plate while maintaining pretty damn good defense. I think it's got to be Banfield, because we all knew the pedigree was there with how high that he was taken, but I think a lot of us were almost out on Banfield. So, I think Banfield surprised me a lot by how much he was able to accomplish this year. So I'll go with Will Banfield as my most surprising player.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, he's been great. And well, first of all, I want to clear the air here. There's been a narrative being pushed that because I think Will Banfield can't catch at the big league level tomorrow, that I don't think he's a solid prospect. I think Will Banfield has progressed really nicely. He has a very good feel to hit, I think, especially for a catcher. And he's also been a really solid defender and continued to progress. And I think he should get a look at some point next year, no doubt about it. And I think he could be a really nice backup that ends up being thrusted into a little bit more of a role and, can hold it down when you need. But for whatever reason, that's turned into I am preying on Will Banfield's downfall. So I want to clarify that that's not the case. He's an awesome dude, and I'm very much rooting for him. I think it would have been nuts to bring him up to the big leagues and throw him into that absolute fire, because I don't think people realize how much of a learning curve there is from going from Double-A after your second, third year there, and then straight to the big leagues as a catcher. That is a lot to handle. Banfield would be, I think, 1A for me, or 1B. And then, of course, you got to go Dane Myers. I know he's not a guy that's been in the system as much, but and a little bit older, but what he's been able to do this year is awesome. I mean, he's turned himself into somebody that, not only should be that got an opportunity at the big league level. He rode a hot streak where he actually helped this team stay afloat in some dire times. Of course, I know he hit a wall, but at the same time, like, he helped them through some spots where he came up with some big hits. He was helpful. And who would have thought that this would be a guy that ends up playing a key part for them, even for a couple weeks at the big league level. And he's played his way into being considered, at least somebody worth a 40-man spot and someone that can plug in and play. And given his story and everything that's kind of happened with him through his journey, I think it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do and how productive he has been in the upper minors this year.
Yeah, and just with all of them performing well. Probably the last thing I really wanted to mention, because you just mentioned Will Banfield, and the catching position for the Marlins has been probably the weakest point over the last couple of years. And how do you guys believe the catching position has been in 2023, organizational-wise, in the minors for the Marlins? Do you see it more as an improvement over the last couple of years, or is it still meddling to the point where it's maybe below league average in terms of the entire minor league system for the Marlins catchers?
I mean, there's just not one single guy that you can be super confident in. For as much a nice stride as Will Banfield has made, Joe Mack has made like an equal step backwards this year, playing in Beloit, and he was just as high a draft pick and a more recent one that Banfield was, but he didn't make that step forward. And Paul McIntosh was the guy we were talking about entering this year. So he missed a little time with injury. He's not hitting at quite the same prolific level that he was the year before with him. So yeah, with PMAC, it was already a long shot that he was going to stick at catcher in the first place, even if he did like hit really well and force himself up. They're still kind of in the wilderness with that, unless you are still a Jorge Alfaro truther and you think he could get back to being the guy. He's still around. He's been awful since they signed him to a minor league deal last month, but Jorge Alfaro is still around. So I don't think he'll be back next year as well. Yeah, they're still in a pretty tough spot at that position.
They'd be in a good spot if they had Kyle Teal, but
they had an opportunity to draft him.
A lot of teams did that.
And they took a step back by losing Ronald Hernandez. I am a big believer in Ronald Hernandez. So yeah, I know Kevin's a big believer in Carmine Lane. I guess we can point out Carmine Lane. I know Kevin will be proud to hear that name. 22-year-old in the FCL this year, but he had a 153 WRC plus. So maybe him for the future. But yeah, they lost a big one in Ronald. So as good as it is to see Banfield take the step forward, like Eli said, there's other guys here that are hasn't been a great year for PMAC. It hasn't been really a great year at all for Joe Mack. And losing Ronald just really hurts. So I would say they took a slight step back with catching, even though they were already thin. I think they're even worse off now in catching.
Yeah. So with that, we go ahead and talk about this. Finally, the Braves series against the Marlins. 3 games against the division-winning Braves will be very difficult for the Fish to hopefully win this series. You're gonna trot out Johnny Cueto out there for the first game, going up against Bryce Elder. I believe Charlie Morton is starting another game for the Braves. Aram, tell us a little bit about this series for the Marlins, what they have to do to at least take a game, maybe potentially 2, before you have to head out.
They got a hit, man, and they got a chance to. I mean, Elder's like they've been able to get to him at points. He's looked very vulnerable. I mean, you look at the overall ERA, and it looks like, oh, he's been good all year. He was one of the more lights out pitchers of the first couple months, and then has been pretty up and down through the second half, and with a lot more down. So they're going to have to hit. But I think a big part of this series is going to be the guy that we opened up with, or at least when I joined in here, which was Jesus Luzardo. I mean, they're going to have to swing it better, of course, but more importantly, I think Luzardo's got to give them a shot. The Braves are going to score some runs. Can you keep them in check? And can Luzardo give you one of the more quality starts that he's been able to put together this year? I mean, it's been a really, I think, encouraging year for him overall. I think he's done a lot to elevate, I think, the perception on him long term, and he's definitely become a really solid piece. But they need one of Luzardo's best outings this year, because Morton's going to compete and give you a quality start. Luzardo's got to at least match that, and then the bat's got to pick up the slack. But I'm looking at Luzardo as kind of that X factor here, because I mean, I'd love to say they need a quality start from Johnny Cueto, but wishful thinking would be underselling that.
Yeah, very difficult there. Rob, if you do have to go, give us maybe your prediction for the series and MVP.
So we got three games. We don't know one of the pitchers, right?
Yeah, we think the middle game it's a bullpen day featuring Brian Hoeing. He's for sure will pitch several of those innings.
Braves crush sinkers. I'm gonna go the Marlins steal 1. Braves take 2 out of 3. Marlins MVP. I'm gonna go Jazz Chisholm. He talks about how much he loves to elevate his game, and he likes to, he thinks he's the best player on the field, and except for when he plays at Cunha or whatever that whole thing is. He clocks in and locks in on a different level. Thank goodness he avoids the injury, and can be in the lineup. I think he makes a difference in this series and helps them win one of the games.
All right, great prediction there. Maybe Jazz can come up, had a couple homers, a couple Eurosteps. But Aram, thank you for joining us, for taking time to join us, talk about 6-2. You have another 6-2 update next time.
Appreciate you guys. Always fun.
All right. Ooh. So we go ahead and talk a little more about this series. I wanted to bring up 2 guys to you guys specifically. 2 MVP candidates the Braves have, Ronald Acuna, but also Matt Olson. I believe he's now the only guy to have 50 home runs this season. Just broke that, on pace for close to 57 and 146 RBIs. Just what has he done to just improve this Braves team, this Braves lineup, giving them even more power, more slugging than what they already had?
Yeah, it's incredible that for as good as Freddie Freeman has been, those two are always going to be linked because of what was essentially those connected decisions to have let Freeman go in order and acquiring Olsen to fill his shoes. And he has filled his shoes, and he's done it, I wouldn't say better than Freddie, but on a comparable level, and done it his own way with all this over the fence power. He's just, the fact that he's able to hit it out so effortlessly to all fields, for somebody that is as powerful as he is and leads the league in home runs. I wouldn't say that there are a ton of majestic home runs. I don't think his average home run distance is up there with Acuna or even somebody like Soler or even Jake Berger. It's nothing super he doesn't get a ton of style points. He just does it constantly. He does it against all different types of pitchers. And it's a pretty big adjustment just from last year. The Braves were a great team last year, and they did it with Olsen being kind of mediocre for a big chunk of that first season with Atlanta. I remember that tone was so much different around him during the first few months of his Braves tenure last year when he was striking out a lot, and there were still some homers, but not enough really to put him on an all-star trajectory, much less it being, on the periphery of an MVP ballot. Yeah, he stands out. But really what stands out most is just the depth of this lineup. There's no soft spot whatsoever. Michael Harris is still hitting ninth in that lineup, even though he's probably as good an offensive player as anybody on the Marlins, with the exception of Arise. And that guy's at the very end of it. You just go all the way from Acuna to Olsen to Harris and everybody in between. There's so much power in here. These guys are going to challenge. It's not just Olsen as a team. They are going to challenge the all-time record for most home runs by a team. And it's because they get it from so many different places. They run the bases well, and they just have all their guys stay healthy for the most part. Their durability, Olsen being one of the best examples of that, the fact that they have whatever they're doing to keep these guys ready to play, and I guess putting them in the mindset that they're ready to go out there and post every single day, that in itself is such a huge advantage over the Marlins or any other team, that they simply have their best guys available so often.
Yeah. Just the way they've all played there for the Braves. Alex, anything you want to mention on the Braves? Again, it seems like every at bat is almost a home run scored, or at least a hit. As Mega with a really great metaphor there. But how do you see these Braves? And then, almost what I mentioned to Aram, could Marlins sneak a game? Maybe two. Is two even in the realm of possibility?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, like Eli said, this lineup is just so good. There's literally no breaks. You don't get a break. You see some slight blue with Albies there, but the guy has been incredible this year. I mean, it's just an insane lineup. Olsen having a career year at age 29. You got Ozuna just reviving his career this year. And then Michael Harris, who's just an incredible. I think he's still a rookie this year, right? So yeah, it's just a fun, really fun team. I know it's not a fun team for us as Marlins fans, but it is a very, very fun team to watch just because there's just so much excitement, so much power, so much bat to ball in this lineup. It's really, really exciting. It's a very exciting team. I think this is definitely a playoff, well, definitely a playoff bound team that should be a World Series favorite. Very good team, one of the best in baseball, and you can definitely see why. It's just it's a juggernaut of a team, and the Marlins are running into it, unfortunately, at a very bad time.
Yeah, very difficult there. We can go ahead and talk a little bit on the Marlins side with Arias at first base, Josh Bell going over to the DH side, Berger third base. Eli, when looking at this lineup, what really stands out to you, and is that 7, 8, 9 worrisome at all?
It's worth noting that Jazz is back, because that was a bit of a question entering this one after he left the Wednesday's game with a little knee discomfort and then sat out yesterday. So him being back is pretty crucial, just because when things go right for him, he makes a pretty big difference, even if he's not his best version of himself every single day. To have him back in there, to have it against a right-handed pitcher, you feel that he could have a pretty big impact here. And otherwise, it's just really similar than what we've been seeing recently since Soler's been out, having Arise at first, having Bell DH. With Arise, Peter Pratt pointed this out on Locked On Marlins. Arise absolutely loves hitting at Lone Depot. His numbers have been great there, even compared to his overall numbers. There's a lot on his shoulders to carry this offense through what has been this really inconvenient dry spell. Arise, this is kind of what their hopes ride on, is him being close to what he was that first half of the season. They need him to finish off strong, and now to have this long homestands at a place that he loves to hit, so much of it is on his shoulders to just be the best version of himself and to give these other guys below him a lot of opportunities to drive him in. As simple as that.
Yeah. Some difficult things there. If you guys are ready, go ahead and do some prediction time.
Yes, let's play the video.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
All right, it's time for predictions. 3-game series between the Marlins and the Braves. Can go either way, and your MVP could be in either Marlin or a Brave, as we look at our super subscribers and see who they are picking for this series. Let's see. We have Williams with Marlins 2-1, Matt Olson. looks like he's trying to head some points there. We have Devin with Jesus Sanchez as his MVP, so he's expecting a couple monster home runs there. And then a good amount of Ronald Acuna Jr., who might end up actually being the MVP of not just the series, but of the National League.
Yeah. And then looking at the overall leaderboard, these are the only people that are still mathematically alive. Sorry, Carver, you fall below the cutoff line. With 5 series remaining, it's down to it's pretty even split between staff and super subscribers here. A tie up top between Grant and Williams. And then Daniel, you're right there in 3rd place. And even myself, it might be just those top 3 that decided as we get to down the wire here. Let's play our video from the ballpark with Isaac and Kevin and a couple special guests.
All right, Eli here for series predictions. Marlins Braves, I'll start. I think the Braves will sweep, and I will say Ronald Acuna is the MVP.
All right. I believe that the Marlins will salvage 1. They lose 2 out of 3. And I think Josh Bell comes back and has a great series.
Cowards. Marlins take 2 out of 3. Jake Berger is your MVP. I have to say that the Braves will win 2 out of 3. And the MVP, Kevin already said Ronald, I would say Matt Olson.
All right.
Let's go right into ours.
Starting off, Mr. Alex Carver.
Well, I'm going to go that the Braves do win 2 out of 3, but I'm going to go with the reverse MVP and go with Jesus Sanchez, who has 8 home runs against the Braves. So I think he's going to hit a couple home runs. I think he's going to get it by win probability added, but that the pitching lets him down. So 2 out of 3 for the Braves, but Jesus Sanchez gets the MVP.
All right. My turn. Keep it short and sweet. Marlins lose 2 out of 3. Braves win 2. And my MVP, I'm going to go with Ronald Acuna Jr. Always matches at Lone Depot Park. Expect big things from him this series. Eli.
Marlins win 2 out of 3. MVP in the series finale to win the rubber game. Jesus Luzardo, a big bounce back for him. Yeah, and I'm doing this a little strategically. I still want a chance to win prediction time. But also, I feel like the Braves lacking maybe not quite as much motivation as they've had for most of this year. Now that they have the NL East division officially locked up, Marlins can take advantage of that.
All right. So a bold prediction there from Eli, as the Marlins will be looking to take at least 2 out of 3 from the Braves. So stay tuned for that. Watch this series. Should be a fun one. Go to the ballpark, grab your popcorn, or just follow us on Fish on First. For myself, Daniel, Eli, Alex, for Arm, who is here. This has been FOF Live presented by La Pop. Always go Fish.